Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before I start the video, I want to say that this is recorded on a 4x3 monitor and I can't change that for YouTube because this is the monitor I am using. And also my mic makes a sort of fuzzy sound. So I apologize for any background noise you would hear and if that irritates you.
Roll the clip!
Hi, do you want to be a dank noscoper like me? Hey, do you want me to teach you how to make suspensions?
Blood loss detected.
Okay, but chances are that you've been building ACF tanks for quite some time now. And you've been using, in order to get your tank to move, wheels that have been axis centered directly to the base with the ball socket so they'll all move together. You should know how to make these already, but just in case, for anyone new here, I'm gonna show you how. Again. So, before we even do that, I want to make mention of a tool called Make Spherical. So, if you use a regular wheel without making it spherical, what happens is when you start to accelerate with an ACF engine, the wheel will spin itself into the ground, which will look something like this. And this sucks, because you got your tank, and it's all ready to go, and you're ready to battle, and then you accelerate, and all your wheels just into the ground. So, what Make Spherical does is stops that from happening. This isn't the best example, but Make Spherical wheels don't spin themselves into the ground like regular wheels would. And because the wheels are made spherical, they are a complete sphere, so you can do this. And it looks bad, I know, but this is why you would use a ball socket, so that it'll give the illusion of only rotating like this, like a regular wheel would. So when you line all your wheels up, that is the first thing you want to do when making this or any type of suspension. Because what will happen if you don't make your wheel spherical before applying any constraints, it'll delete the constraints. So let's just say I got my ropes and everything's cool, I got elastics and stuff, and then I make the wheel spherical last minute. Everything gets deleted and you have to do that again. Which as you can imagine sucks. So once you've made all of your wheels spherical, and I already did, you can see the hitbox is bigger, and if I touch this wheel, I'm not touching the wheel, but it's spherical. I am touching the wheel, but it's spherical. So I'm touching part of a sphere and not part of the wheel. And I just dropped the wheel, so I'm gonna have to respawn this whole thing. By the way, pressing R deletes constraints with the type of constraint selected. So the first thing to do is to axis center all these wheels to the base. Simple enough. Make sure you're clicking the side of the wheel and anywhere on the base. I'm just going to click in the center because axis centering doesn't have a good reputation with me, because I might just click anywhere on the wheel, on the side of the wheel, and it still doesn't work. Then I'm going to apply my ball socket. So the minimums are the maximums, and the maximums are the minimums. And what that'll do is whatever wheel I constrain this wheel to, this wheel will copy the motions of this wheel, with free movement check. So I'm just going to do this. And when I move these, you can see the rest of the wheels moving. And they also are connected to the base, so I can't move these. Okay. So to make the suspension harder or softer, you would basically change the weight of the wheels. So let's just say I made my wheels 20. Actually, I'm going to make them... yeah. Oh. I'm going to make them weigh 7. You can see the suspension is really light. Too light, in fact. And let's just say I made my wheels weigh more. The suspension would be rock solid. But I'm just going to put this back to normal and take this buggy for a drive. And the whole point of this, and I know you already know how axis-centered suspension works, but the whole point of this is to show you the comparison between this type of suspension and the next couple of types. So, if there wasn't any rough terrain, this suspension would be all that you need, really. But real tanks battle in all sorts of terrain, so, and it's a lot funner. It's a lot more fun to battle on a jungle map than compared to a map that's completely flat with no obstacles or anything. So let me see if I can get a good example here. You can see the suspension adjust really quick to the terrain, and it's very bouncy when I hit a sudden bump in the terrain like this. It's just bouncing up and down like crazy. And you can fix this by making the wheels lighter. However, there are better ways to... Well, the ways are going to be a little bit more complicated, but I personally think the results are a lot better than you can get by just using a solid axis-centered suspension. So let's go and check out our first suspensions. This is 100% real unedited gameplay, by the way. So before we make the first suspensions, I want to show you the basic parts of all of these suspensions. So I'm just going to get a plate like this, and I'm just going to get a random wheel. This. And let's go over limiters first. Or not limiters, but arms. So the arms are going to be rigid ropes, and what those will do is it'll give the wheel a like a little bounds to travel in when it goes in its up and down motion. So, and I'm just going to use ropes for this so you can see it a little bit better. So let's just say I have an arm like this. The suspension can go up, or the wheel can go through its motions up and down on a little arc like this. Now you can probably see the wheel is rotating, and that's not good for any suspension really. So we fix this by using a ball socket. So basically what we want to do is we want to stop it from moving left and right and allow it to still rotate in the direction the vehicle is facing. So I am facing east. You can see it by my
compass.
This is part of the TFA HUD add-on, and you get this little HUD, and to the bottom left is
Compass.
and I'm looking west and east. So I'm going to use my y-axis. Well, I'm going to restrict everything but my y-axis. So x minimum is the maximum, z maximum is its minimum, and same for the z minimums and x maximums. But the y, I don't want to restrict that, so I'm going to allow that to rotate a full 360 degrees. So if you don't have a
Compass.
you could spray on the ground and the top of your spray will naturally face north, but I'm not in a server, so the way I can find the directions is if you go to paint under render, and you can go down and find smile, and this will always face north, so naturally east and west will be that way, and north and south is always the x-axis. However, east and west is always the y-axis. Okay. So I'm gonna put this ball socket on here with free movement checked again, as you can see. And now the wheel doesn't rotate, which is nice. So I can try and force it to rotate, and it's not gonna rotate. Okay, so as you can see, this wheel can go wherever it wants, basically. How do I stop this? So basically, you would just use a limiter. First, let me go over another type of arm you can use. So I'm just going to put the wheel right here, delete the ropes. These are rigid ropes again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the wheel to the middle because it'll be easier to work with. I'm going to put a rope right here and another right here. Now the distance between your arms doesn't matter at all as long as they're on the same line. So both the arms are on this line right here in Smart Snap. So this arm will work as well, except it has a different direction of motion the wheel can go in. So it would go up and down like this. But generally we'll use a arm like this. So I mentioned that the wheel can do this all day long, and it won't there's no way to limit it. Well, there is a way to limit it, but it's not limited. So how do we limit it? So we use non-rigid ropes to limit the motion of the wheel. So I'm just gonna change this to something else so it'll be easily distinguished. So this is a non-rigid rope from the middle of the wheel to the base. So I'm just gonna show you what happens. And I can't go up anymore. And I can't go down anymore. So the most simple way to remember how... Okay. Yeah. So basically, twice the length of this rope is the total amount this wheel will be able to go up and down, or travel. So you can see, same distance as it was below the vehicle. So this is good and all, but there's nothing stopping the wheel from just bottoming out if I drop this plate. Right? It just sits there. How do we put some resistance with this? That's what makes a suspension a suspension. So we will be using props that we're going to be using as springs. So I'm just going to put this here. Weld it to the base. The springs will normally be welded to the base. The wheel. I'm just going to color this red. And I'm going to put some weight on the base. And with about all of the suspensions, the wheel will be axis centered to the plate. So again, you have your arm, which defines how your wheel will be able to move. You have a limiter, if you so choose to. Generally, I won't put limiters on my vehicles, but if I had detail over here, I would, because I don't want my... Let's just say I had a bunch of wheels and I had a track cover. I don't want my wheels to go through the track cover, because that'll look bad. And then you have your plate, which you're going to be using as a spring, which basically makes the suspension, if I must say. And changing the weight of this spring will change how hard it's off the suspension is. So right now it weighs 24 by default. Make it weigh 10. Sags a little more. Make it weigh 2. What resistance, right? And also you can make it stiffer. So let's do 40. Really stiff. Now the thing I want to mention is this is kind of exponential in that as the spring gets heavier, it starts to kill itself. So let's just say I made this the same weight as the base. You can see it starting to sag more, and let's make that weigh 2,000. So what this means is you can only make your plate so heavy when making your suspension stiff. Another thing that's really important that you should know is if you have a spring that's farther away from your wheel, say like over here, and if you remember, our spring weighed 24 at first and the suspension was just fine, it drops to the floor. Now, why is that? It was working just fine earlier when it was closer to the wheel. That's the whole point. The farther away the suspension is from the wheel, the less effective it'll be. So let's just say we put the spring inside the wheel. You don't have to do this. Generally, about right here is good, near the outer edges of your vehicle. And also you want to have your springs inside the vehicle, so like if you got shot at by let's see. Let's just say this tank or artillery comes around the corner or something, and he's got this big boy howitzer. You don't want your spring to get blown off from HE. You don't want your spring to be underneath the vehicle. You want it to be at least protected by some sort of armor. So like this guy can just come around the corner and shoot at the ground and blow your plate off, and well, you won't be able to move basically. Now about something else. I'm just gonna set this up again. What the world? What are you doing? Oh, okay. I get it. Okay, so I got my spring set up. So you notice when I drop the plate, it's quite bouncy at first. This can be fixed by an elastic with damping. So I will normally use precision alignment to place my elastic, but you don't have to. So I have this elastic with 50 dampening, so I'm just gonna put it on here. You can see the vehicle absorbs the impact a lot quicker and doesn't bounce around too much. Well, then I say that and it proves me wrong. So about make spherical. You remember what I said about deleting constraints? Because what will happen if you don't make your wheel spherical before applying any constraints? It'll delete the constraints. So let's just say I got my ropes. Well, now it doesn't seem to be the case, but normally it would have deleted the constraint. Also, this gets stiffer when I made it spherical. But I normally make my wheel spherical before I create the constraints because I was building a car one day and I had everything set up with all the hydraulics and stuff, and I made the wheel spherical and it deleted all the constraints. So, something you should know. Take note of. So all that goes to understanding how suspension works. So first I place, okay, let me just slow down real quick. This is the Red's Bogie made by Red Reaper 2020, and he has a YouTube channel called Red Reaper 2020. And it's ironic that these are blue instead of being red. Also the chair. Yeah, there we go. So the suspension is bogie, which I believe means that the two wheels are connected to each other in some form of way or some fashion. So that means you're gonna have to have an even number of wheels. So your wheels are gonna have to be in pairs of 2, 4, 6, 8, and hopefully your vehicle isn't that long, otherwise it wouldn't be able to turn. Look at my tank! Can't wait to test it out! I'm gonna have to fix this. Let's take it for a test drive. Uh-oh, why can't I turn? Uh-oh. So you just start by placing your wheels and making them spherical and maybe no colliding them to the base in each other. And I'm going to use precision alignment to do this. You want to find the midway point between these two wheels. So I'm just going to use precision alignment, point coordinate center, and I'm going to right click over the first wheel, press R, and that'll bring up this nice menu. And I'm going to go to the points tab, this second tab over here. Then I'm going to select point 1 as my primary point. Check relative to entity, and that'll basically take these coordinates and put them relative to this wheel. So I know that this wheel is 20 units in diameter, so I'm just gonna put 20, and that gets us close to the halfway point, but not quite. So let's find the distance from this wheel center to this point. So I'm just going to highlight this wheel, and it's almost like refreshing, but I'm going to uncheck this and check it again. And you can see we get our new Y coordinate. So my main goal is to get half the distance between, or not half the distance, but I want the midpoint of these two wheels to be the same distance from the singular point. So I'm going to go back and forth adjusting this until I get it about right. You probably don't need to make it perfect, but I will for this. I'm just going to go back and forth, checking my points, and see, that's about right. So now that you have the midpoint between these two wheels, and again, the main point of doing this is to place our spring in such a way to be halfway between these two wheels, which you could eye it if you want it, but I'm going to use precision alignment to do this. So I'm going to right click on the base, refresh point 1 again, and I want to keep my X value. I want to make Y 0 because that's the left and right of the base. If I just show you, see how this point is all the way out here? I want it to be in the center because I'm going to use one main spring for this. And your spring should reach both edges of the vehicle to be effective. The Z, I'm just going to put 1.5 for this. So that'll make the point on top of our base, because this base is 3 units thick and half of that is 1.5. So now I have the point where I'm going to place my base. So you should get a prop that covers the width of the vehicle. Not that it has to cover the width of the vehicle, but as long as it gets close to the wheels that you want to constrain. It doesn't have to be as long as this. It could actually just be like a little pole if you wanted it to, but I only did this so it when I place it, it gets close to both of the wheels. So you see, like here and here and here. So moving the prop to the point that we just put down. So I'm just going to use my regular Q menu for this. I'm going to select point hit position and highlight point 2 and click where I want to move my prop to that point. So because this prop is going to sit on top, I'm going to move it from the bottom of it, so like that. And now you can see point 2 is in the middle of my spring, point 1 is on the base. I'm going to right click on my prop, and in the left column I'm going to have point 2 selected. That's the point we're going to move to this point. So not like this, because I'd be moving this entity from point 1 to point 2, which will just like do that. But I want to move point 2 to point 1. So point 2, point 1, and then just click move entity. So now that we have our spring placed, we want to, and instead of welding this, I'm going to axis center this plate to the base, the side of this plate to anywhere on the base. And now I want to restrict the up and down pitching of this plate, and that'll be important later, so I'm going to restrict it to about, and this is the x-axis, if you remember, with our smiley faces. They always face north, so it's a little arrow for you to see it's facing north. So I want to limit the pitching by degrees. So I'm going to limit everything else, the y and z axis, like so, with the minimums maximum and the maximums minimum. And I'm going to make the x minimum -20 and the y maximum 20. So that'll give me plus or minus 20 degrees up and down motion on this plate with free movement checked in anywhere on the plate, anywhere on the base. So what you should get is this. And it can't move left or right even if I try it. So now we're going to right click over the base because I want to put my arms on the vehicle. And again, you can eye this as well, but I'm going to use precision alignment. I'm going to right click the base. I still have my old coordinates for point 1, so I'm just going to move down to point 2. And I'm going to set the y to 30. This is left or right. This can be any value as you want. So I can put this as 1337. this is negative 1337. But these are where your ropes are going to be. So I'm going to put this somewhere realistic, like 30. Now because we want to connect the ropes to the base of the vehicle, we're going to highlight the base again, going to the Q menu, select point 1, and click attach, point 2, attach, and point 3, attach. What that'll do is attach the points to whatever prop you have highlighted or selected. So I can attach them, and the way you can tell they're attached to the base, if the way you can tell the points are actually attached to the base is you'll see these green lines going to the center of the base. So I can attach them to the wheel if I want it. I have the wheel highlighted. But we want to attach these to the base, not the little wheels here. So, okay, I'm going to go back to point coordinate center, and I'm going to highlight point 4, and I'm just going to delete the ropes I already have here. So I'm going to click on this wheel, and you can like, now you can barely see a green line if you can, but this is connected to the wheel, and I guess it doesn't need a green line because it's in the center of the prop, but this is connected to the wheel point 4. So I'm gonna go into my arm menu and go to constraints, rope, and I'm gonna make sure rigid is checked. You can make your ropes invisible if you want, but I'm gonna select point 4, and this is my first point. So imagine if I went over and clicked on the inside of the wheel, that'll be like me clicking there. And then if I went over and clicked on the base, that'll be like me clicking there, but it's much more precise. So I click point 4, point 1, create constraint. Point 4 to point 3, because it's on this side, create constraint. Now, you only need 2 ropes for your arm to work, but you could do 3 if you want. So as long as they're on the same line, this will still work, but I'm not going to do that. So next wheel, and notice how the arm on this goes back into the middle of the spring. That's important. So I'm going to constrain this wheel to points 1 and 3 again. And again, notice how the arms for this wheel go to the same points. So now I'm going to go to the other side and constrain point 4 to 2 and 1, because those are my other 2 points. And I'm reusing point 1. So now that that's done, what you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to axis center your wheels. All the wheels that are corresponding to this plate to the plate. So like this wheel to this plate, this wheel to this plate, and also on the other side as well. This wheel to this plate. And I'm going to have to delete the axis center. But you can put a roll bar between these 2 wheels as well, which is just an axis center between the 2 wheels. And what that'll do is when you're going fast, I mean like Sonic the Hedgehog, and you just like do a turn, it'll help stop the vehicle from flipping over. So when that's done, I'm just gonna delete the elastics I have on here. You should get something like this. Now notice how my vehicle is in the ground. That's actually because this suspension sucks and I don't recommend it at all. No, I'm just kidding. So I have a weight imbalance. This big old engine is in the front, and there's nothing in the back to counteract that. So I can fix this by using elastics. And I'm going to use precision alignment to do this once again. So I just want to get the wheel straight. Here we go. So I'm going to have point coordinate center selected again. Now I'm going to left click on this wheel, and I'm going to hold shift and left click on it again. And I'm going to keep holding shift and left click on this wheel twice. Same with this wheel. And that'll allow me to place multiple points on these wheels. So now I'm going to right click the base and attach some of these points to the base. So 2, 4, 6, and 8. So now I'm going to go into my arm menu, and I already have the value estimated. It's about 30,000 I'm going to need to counteract the imbalance. And you can also put your damping in here. I have about 1,000 damping. So something I want to point out is, notice how I have stretch only selected. You don't have to use stretch only elastics, but I hear they are better for using suspensions. I'm not sure how or why, so I don't have a explanation for that. So I'm going to connect point 1 to point 2, 3 to 4, and I don't want to connect point 1 to point 4, for example, because points 1 and 2 are for this wheel, points 3 and 4 are for this wheel. You don't want these to be like interconnected with each other. That would be, I don't think that would work very well. So I'm going to go down the line, point 5 to 6, and 7 to 8. And now I'm going to do the same for these wheels, except I'm not going to put a spring constant on there because I don't have, the weight imbalance isn't centered here, it's centered over here near the front of the vehicle. So again, I'm going to connect some of these points to the base. And I'm going to get rid of the spring constant but keep my damping. I'm just going to connect all this up. So once you do all that, that should fix the weight imbalance problem. And theoretically, you'd be ready to go. Now notice how this plate is... Notice how if we allowed it, this plate would pitch all the way up, and well, we want to, the way out, let me think. So imagine if you limited this with a ball socket to a value greater than that 20 we put on. I'm going to make the X minimum negative 20 and the Y maximum 20, so that'll give me the wheels. They would be able to pitch up at an angle like this, and that could like jam the suspension and the vehicle will get stuck, and you basically immobilize yourself because this plate's going to be up in the air and the suspension's going to settle like that. If I can get a proper example. Well, it's not doing it right now, but it would be able to do that, and it just sit up there and it wouldn't move. So you can put a limiter on here, and I'm not going to use precision alignment to do, well, actually I am. I'm just going to get the wheel straight. So I'm going to put a limiter on here to stop the wheels from pitching a certain amount, and I'm going to put my ball socket back on because I deleted it. So, okay. Then I'm gonna connect some of these points to the base. Basically what I did is I put 2 points on each wheel because one of those points are gonna be on the base, one of those points are gonna be on the wheel because I want to put a rope from the wheel to the base. So I'm going to highlight the first wheel, which has points 1 and 2, and I don't need this X value anymore, so I'm just going to delete it. And I'm going to put my limiter, say, 5 units up. And these got changed, so I'm going to have to use the Y-axis because the wheel rotated. Actually, I'm going to do -8. And the coordinates for this wheel are 1 and 2, but the coordinates for this wheel are 3 and 4. So keep that in mind when changing around your points. So I'm going to want to move 4 up because that's the point that's connected to the base. Over here I'm going to want to move 0.6 up. And over here I'm going to move 0.8 up. So limiters are non-rigid ropes. Keep that in mind. 0.1 to 0.2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, and 7 to 8. So I'm just going to put limiters on the front wheels for now because the back wheels don't really need them. So let's take this suspension for a test drive and see what happens. See if it's a little better. So if you remember the solid axis suspension, it was very bouncy and very rough if you didn't get the axis centers, or if you didn't get the weight of the wheels just right. But as you can see, this is a lot smoother going over the various dips and rises in the terrain. And I think Red Reaper did a fantastic job making this suspension. And if you get the damping just right, it only gets better from there. You're gonna have to play around with that yourself, though. Now, Red did say that the suspension was meant for 10 to 30 miles. Vehicles that could do 10 to 30 miles per hour, but you could fit it on a vehicle faster. So let's go slower and see the suspension go to work. So you can see the wheels are separated. That's why we have our arms the way we have them, so it'll allow them to spring away from each other. So if I just show you right now, they can spring away from each other, but also because these are bogies, when one of these wheels go up, I'm just gonna do it on the back wheel. When one of these wheels go up, the other one will go down. So not only can these wheels spring, but they can also oscillate over the terrain. Which makes Bogies suspensions really good, I think. So let's go check out our other suspension, which is really similar to this one, with the only difference being that the bogies are separated by a wheel's difference. So, oh, okay, yeah. So, I'm not sure what to call this, but I believe it's called the 2-point spring plate suspension. However, I am not sure because there isn't a whole lot of information on it. The only basic difference between this suspension and the last is that you can see that this wheel right here and this wheel right here are attached to this spring, and this wheel and this wheel are attached to this spring. Same on the other side as well. So connected to that, connected to that. That's really the only main difference. Again, you still have to find the midpoint between these two wheels roughly, so just about right here or on top of this wheel. And there's something about spacing the wheels apart like this that makes the suspension so much better, but it does have one drawback. And I forgot to mention, but there's a ball socket on the wheels to the base in the direction the vehicle is facing, so that the wheels can't like turn. I'm assuming one of the wheels don't have the ball socket. In fact, it's so basically, because this wheel faces this direction, I restricted everything but the x-axis. So without this, what the wheels will be able to do is like, and this is with free movement check, but what the wheels will be able to do is they would be able to like turn in to each other. And you don't want that when making your suspension. So I'm just gonna put that ball socket back on here to stop that from happening. And there is a roll bar between these wheels as well. Now I'm going to connect these wheels up so they move with each other, because when I deleted the ball socket, that deleted all the ball sockets that I had. So, but this suspension is exactly the same as the other one in that they're both bogied, and you make them the same way, if not for that one difference. But you can see as I accelerate with the suspension, the vehicle pitches. That's the only drawback with this suspension. Let's just say you had a tank that was reliant on armor angling, like you had this plate that was sloped back at like 80 degrees or something insane like that, and you needed it to be at that degrees to just get away with armor angling. This suspension is not the suspension for you, because once you accelerate, you de-angle that plate. And also once you brake, the vehicle will pitch down as well. But I think this is the best suspension you can use, if not for that one drawback. I really do like the Bogies suspensions. Okay, I think I can better explain how the suspension works now, watching through the video, but if you remember, the wheels are spaced out more, the interconnected wheels, so if you remember the Red's Bogie, it could oscillate over the terrain. This has much more spacing, so it can oscillate even more. And you can see it's really smooth to drive, especially compared to the solid axis suspension. And if you get the damping just right, it only gets better, as I said before. Oh yeah, my base plate has its collisions disabled, so I'm able to go through these, which is interesting. But again, when one of these wheels goes up over a piece of terrain, the other one will get forced down, and they also can spring away from each other with your arms going towards each other on the wheels. So that's about it for part 1. In the next part, I'm going to show you the plate suspensions, which aren't bogey and act more of a track or torsion bar. And okay, guys and gals, that was my first, well, not first attempt, but my attempt at making my first public YouTube video. I did make another, but I didn't set it to public because it was more of a test. So as I said, in the next part, I will be talking about plate suspension. So suspension like this, where you just have one big old plate and little arms, but that's for the next video. Also, some I didn't point out was that these suspensions, here, let's go here. The suspension can support tanks that regular hydraulics wouldn't be able to support. Like, I have this 2-point spring plate here, or I think it is a 2-point spring plate. Again, I don't have information on it, but this tank weighs 155 tons.
That shit is fucking trash,
if you're
dog.
not worried about the parented weight and only about the physical weight, then this base plate weighs 9,500. So when we drop this, you can see it's springing, so it does use suspensions, and I'm not lying, this does have suspension. But anyway, if there was something I did that you didn't, hang on. But anyway, if there was something I did that you don't like or I could do better, please let me know in the comments of this video. And if you need help making the suspensions, let me know as well. And I know I did the recording live, so I know my voice was kind of flat, and it is now as well, but this was my first video again. So if you found the video helpful, I would appreciate a like, and if you disliked the video, well then, but no, seriously, tell me what I could be doing better in my video. And I should be doing part 2 very soon. I have no promises. And that is about it.